Hey now, it's Brace for Impact, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it's still the same. We're talking TNA wrestling, and let me get that back on. So this is an impromptu live stream. I did not schedule this. I did not plan this. I am literally sitting in my car in Hawaii, and I'm waiting to get a safety inspection done, and I'm completely boxed in. So I didn't realize how long this line was going to be. And so I have 3 or 4 cars in front of me, and I got 4 cars behind me, and no possible way to exit. And it's raining outside, so so I am stuck in my car right now. And I just got done listening to Dave Meltzer and Garrett Gonzalez on their Wrestling Observer Radio from last night. And so I was like, I actually hit up JD because JD and I want to do a Halloween themed episode coming up this week. We're not going to be able to go live on Thursday night because when we go live, that's right around the time I'm going to take my kid trick-or-treating. Or my kids. I have 2 now. My kids trick-or-treating. And so we're going to record on Wednesday. We were going to do like a double episode. I hit him up and said, hey, you want to just record right now? I'm just sitting in my car, and it doesn't have to sound great. We can just do an episode like on our phones if you want and talk some Halloween shit. And he was, but he's doing some family stuff right now. He's on a family vacation. So, but yeah, I'm chilling in my car. So if you're watching this live, feel free to hop in the chat and fire away some comments and questions. I'll pull them up and address them. But if not, I just had some shit that I wanted to get off my chest. The first thing is I wanted to discuss TNA Impact going live because I feel like it's not being made into a big deal by anybody. I don't know why. Mike Johnson talked about it on, like, he had like a sentence on PW Insider, and he's usually pretty good at pushing out TNA PR. But I feel like this whole thing is being undersold by TNA. And he really just had a sentence that said, yeah, they're going to go live on January 23rd from San Antonio, Texas, in the Boeing Tech Center. It's going to be 4 days after Not Hard to Kill, Genesis, which is going to be live in the Caldwell Center in Dallas, Texas, which that's a huge arena. It's a huge arena that AEW and Ring of Honor have had trouble selling out in the past. So they are being very ambitious with that. So I'm going to be curious to see what the setup looks like. But am I on here, guys? Hop in the chat. I believe I'm on the stage. I hope I'm on the stage. So if you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up in the chat. But if not, I guess I'll find out later. But yeah, if you guys are in the chat, okay. All right, if you're in the chat away. Give me some insight that we're here. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, cool. I'm on my phone, so sometimes I don't know if this thing works or not. So, but Ring of Honor and like the AEW led Ring of Honor had trouble selling the Caldwell Center out in the past, and AEW has also had their issues selling out there in the past. So it's going to be very interesting to see what TNA is able to do with their Genesis pay-per-view on the 19th. And then 4 days later, they're going to go right back to a pretty big venue in the Boeing Tech Center on a Thursday night. And it's tough to sell tickets during the week. And AEW has found that out recently. Like, they were hot. And when they were hot, they were able to do a lot of business on Wednesday nights. But when you're not hot, it is much easier to sell tickets on a Friday or Saturday night because you don't have to get up and go to work the next morning. So more people are more willing to stay up late on when they don't have to get up the next morning than they are when they have to get up and go right back to work the next morning. So I think it's going to be real interesting to see if they're able to do business. Like, it is very ambitious for them to do that. More ambitious than, honestly, like I thought they would ever be. But it looks like they're testing it out. They're taking a big swing here, and I applaud them for it. Because what I've been wanting them to do for years, and I've been preaching this on Brace for Impact, and those of you guys that have been listening to me for a long time, you guys will know that I have always thought that they should go live on a pay-per-view, right? So live on a pay-per-view, and then follow it up with a live episode on that following Thursday, and then do another like taping the following night and just kind of tape a month's worth of shows. And then that way you're doing, you're doing a live pay-per-view only one night in that city. Just do a bigger arena, get everybody into that arena that one night, because the TV tapings the next night are always usually tough. And then go live that following Thursday in a studio type setting or a smaller venue type setting. My thought was like do Full Sail University like live once a month on Thursday, do a double taping that night, and then the Friday night do another double taping, and then that would be the routine. Just and that way you get a live episode of Impact every month, and you get a live pay-per-view every month. That's what I thought that they should be doing. But instead, what they're doing is they're going to go, well, at least for this one time. We don't know what the plans are going forward. This very much feels like them testing out how hot they're going to be and how hot they can stay. But they're going to go live from Dallas, and then San Antonio is like roughly 2.5 hours away from Dallas, depending on traffic. And they're going to go just down the road there in San Antonio. I used to live in San Antonio, so I know the area pretty well. So they're going to go down the road there at the Boeing Tech Center and check it out. It's a very ambitious thing for them to do. I don't know that it's going to drive any viewership, because nothing that they've been able to do, even this whole partnership with NXT, has not driven any viewership to Access. It has driven pay-per-views, it has driven ticket sales, it has driven app subscriptions, but ain't nobody upgrading their cable package, or nobody is willing to go out and get Sling, or nobody is willing to do anything to make sure that they have Access TV, regardless of what TNA is doing with NXT, and regardless of how hot Joe Hendry is, how hot the Hardys are, if they're bringing in JBL. None of that matters. No, like nobody's willing to go out of the way to make sure that they got Access TV to watch this TV show right now. I do think some people, because of the uptick in business, I do think a lot more people are watching on TNA Plus, and that's a good thing. But they're not able to get people to go to Access to watch their show, regardless of what they're doing. So I don't know that this is going to be driving anybody to go watch their weekly show. But maybe, just maybe, and we've talked about it here before, like the chicken or the egg analogy, right? Is this their impetus to get on another network? Are they testing out their live capabilities and what it looks like live, and what they're able to do to signal to other networks like, hey, this is what we're capable of. Bring us in, and we'll do good business on your station, even though on our little station we can't really do much of anything at all. So it's gonna be interesting. Let me go to the chat here really quick, and thanks to everybody for letting me know that you can hear me. Let's see. Brian says, with live shows, I wonder if it means the new TV deal. Well, their advertisement said that they're going to be live on Access January 23rd. So at least on January 23rd, they're still going to be on Access TV. But maybe this is their way to parlay this new strategy into another TV deal, because I don't think that they're going to be upgrading their stock in the wrestling scene while staying on Access. I just don't. It's been covered extensively everywhere. No matter what they do, they can't get people to come to Access TV anymore. Everybody will point to the fact that Kenny Omega did really good numbers on Access, and that is true. Like, he did monster numbers. It was like there's the two biggest stars in the history of Impact on Access, legit, are Kenny Omega and Tessa Blanchard, because they're the only ones that were able to ever get their TV show over 200,000 viewers. And it just wasn't sustainable, but they were able to do it. And if you take a look, I used to actually do like a ratings analysis, and I had a spreadsheet. Am I still on here? And I had a spreadsheet where I was in detail, and I detailed the ratings for years. And the two biggest ratings draws were in the history of this TV show on Access were Kenny Omega and Tessa Blanchard. Kenny Omega got them over 220,000, and Tessa Blanchard was just right underneath. And she actually had a few episodes over 200,000, while Kenny Omega had one episode over 200,000. But you got to remember, like, this was back in the day with Tessa. It was right before the pandemic in 2020, like late 2019 going into 2020. They were in a lot more homes back then. And then a year later, it was Kenny Omega. They're probably in like 50% less homes than they were back then. right now. And so NXT has just not driven any. The NXT partnership has not driven any television ratings, but it has driven every other reportable metric that we have has gone up. So let's see. I'm going to get some more. So let's see. Io says also a new distribution got to be on the horizon. Access can only do much. Yeah, that is true. Dan says with the live show, we'll see how it goes. And Brian, Leon Slater has to be the one to beat Speedball for the X Division title. I think that's a great point. I agree with you there. Speedball has been an excellent X Division champion. He's going to go down in history as one of the better X Division champions they've ever had. And X Division competitors as a whole. And I think it's important, instead of losing it to Vikingo, which it seems like at one point he was set to lose to Vikingo because they made the graphic that Vikingo was the X Division champion. So something at the last minute must have changed, and I'm waiting for like Mike Johnson or Sean Ross Sapp to report what happened on that. But at some point, somebody in that company believed that Vikingo was winning because the graphic had been made. So they must have made a last-second pivot, and I hope that pivot ultimately ends with Leon Slater defeating Speedball Mike Bailey on Bailey's way out of the company. I absolutely agree with you there. Let's see. Io says AEW fans wanted to know what Omega does next after beating Moxley. That's why they tuned into Access. When you think of it, yeah. I mean, people want to. That angle with Moxley and Omega was hot. It really, that was a great angle. Nobody saw that shit coming. Rarely in pro wrestling can you surprise people, and I thought that, them doing. I want to say, I don't know if it was it their Winter's Coming episode. I think it might have been the Winter's Coming episode, which is one of their bigger episodes of the year. They had Moxley and Omega in the main event, and then Don Callis is just on commentary. And Callis interferes and costs Moxley the title. And Omega's the champion, flips heel, and then tells everybody to tune into Access the following week, or the following week on Tuesday night. That was back when they were on Tuesdays. And it popped a humongous number because everybody wanted to see what the hell this was all about. And he still remained a pretty decent draw, but they were never able to recapture that number again. So it wasn't just Omega. It was like the angle playing out from one show to the other. And people wanted to tune in and check it out. So it was a really cool time. It might not have ended the way we all wanted to, but I think for a short term it did a lot of good for Impact. He got a lot of eyes on Impact. It just wasn't sustainable because they couldn't AEW really didn't want to be in bed with Impact. I think they just wanted to do the belt collector gimmick, and they wanted Don Callis over in AEW, but they didn't want to put over anybody in Impact because they just saw Impact as being so far beneath them. And nobody wants to be treated. People want to be treated with dignity, and AEW didn't want to treat Impact with dignity. They just kind of wanted to get their guy over, which is ultimately what happened. They say, hey, you're just lucky to have him on your show, and that's kind of how it all ended up. But in the short term, they did do some good business. They popped like 2 pay-per-views and a handful of ratings, but that was about it. Let's see. Brian, Fightful said earlier in the week that Jordan was set to win. I never saw that. So I don't know about that. But I was always of the opinion that Masha was going to win. I think maybe she was favored for the Bet Online thing, and I think Sean Ross Sapp has been doing a promotional deal with that website. I think they're sponsors of his, and he probably tweeted that she was favored to win, but I don't know that she was ever slated to win. Dan, Vikingo's contract is up in the near future too. Yeah, I think Ibu said it on his show that Vikingo is probably going to do a handful of dates with TNA, and then head over to WWE once his deal's up. So Conan decides what Vikingo's future is. Yeah, I mean that's why we're seeing Vikingo on TNA and not on AEW anymore. I know he's been injured for a while, but the AAA partnership with AEW is dead. And I don't think we're going to be seeing Vikingo on AEW television anymore. I think as far as American TV, until his contract's up, he's probably going to be only working TNA. And I think that's good news for TNA and TNA fans. I mean, his match with Speedball was fucking tremendous last night. I loved that match. That was a lot of fun. He is fantastic. Another thing that I wanted to get into was the Tribalists. And I'm specifically talking about WWE Tribalists. I saw some tweets last night from anti-AEW fedophiles, WWE fans, Vincels, New York stands, Fed heads, whatever you want to call them. They're trying to prop up TNA as a way to insult AEW, and that doesn't help TNA. And honestly, I know TNA fans, they don't want anything to do with that pissing contest between WWE and AEW. They want nothing to do with it, but because of the fact that TNA is working with NXT, they're kind of getting caught in the middle a little bit, and it really sucks because the NXT partnership has been pretty fun. The NXT partnership has been pretty fun, but the downside is you get caught into that fucking culture war between those two companies and those two fan bases, and it sucks. So I saw one tweet last night. I'm not even gonna. I typically would bring it up, but I can't on my phone. I don't have that capability. But there was one tweet that I saw, and it was a really bad tweet. It would be great for a segment on bad tweets. Maybe I'll bring it up again on the Mike and JD show. But somebody showed a wide shot of the audience at Bound for Glory and said that moment when WBD execs realized they picked the wrong company to give 170 mil to. That was a dumb tweet. That was a bad tweet. AEW had nothing to do with TNA's night, and when you do that, you actually are dragging it down, because then now what you're doing is you're going to cause a bunch of AEW crackheads to go crazy on TNA and downplay what TNA was able to accomplish last night, which was their biggest Bound for Glory in 11 years. Like, why can't you just, you can prop up one company, or you can talk about what you like without having to downgrade something else that you don't like. You don't always have to compare everything, right? And TNA is kind of off in their own little world. They're not involved in this culture war. They're not even a competitor to either company. They have a fraction of the budget of AEW. They have a fraction of a budget of WWE. They are not involved in this thing whatsoever. So when you do that, you're not actually helping TNA. And I get it. You're getting, it's purely engagement posts, but when you guys get involved in this shit, you only really make yourselves look bad, and you make yourselves look stupid. We got to be honest about what TNA was able to accomplish last night. They probably had 2,500 to 3,000 people in there, and that is fucking excellent for them. At their level, that is tremendous, because you got to think about, like I just said, let's just go ahead and say 3,000 fans, because I think that's what Dave Meltzer was saying. He'll probably have a better number in his observer. And he's got connections there, and I think they'll tell him the number. In fact, Lance Storm happens to work for Dave Meltzer, and he happens to work for TNA. So if you guys are wondering if Dave's going to tell the truth about TNA, just keep that in mind. Okay. But 3,000 people is an amazing audience for a TNA pay-per-view, and it's supposedly their biggest pay-per-view of the year. That is a bad night for an AEW show. That's just honest. And because of the disparity between the two budgets. That is a big TNA show, not a great AEW show. That's the way it is. This is an amazing success, and why can't we just celebrate that? Why does it have to be AEW? Look at what TNA was able to do, and then make fun of AEW at the same time. You don't have to do that. You really don't. I think TNA was smart. They got 3,000 people in a venue that holds 3,000 people. While AEW is doing collisions, they're going to get, anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 people in a stadium that holds 20,000 people, and I think that's why it looks so much better on television than what we've been seeing on Dynamite and Collision. So when those Fed stands, when those idiots are doing that, it now causes AEW fans to go out and defend their brand like they fucking work there. They don't, but they go on and they have to defend AEW against the onslaught of people, of WWE fans praising TNA, and it all is fucking weird and creepy, and I just can't stand it. Let's see. Io says, I laughed at that tweet. I don't know if that's a compliment. It was a dumb tweet. It was a bad tweet. Fed fans were already asking when Hendry is leaving. Yeah, I mean, we all know that Hendry is not going to stay in this company forever. Apparently, he's here till October 2025. I don't know if he's going to stay around very much longer, but one would assume that he's going to go on and be the Scottish LA Knight at some point. And Io says, it takes attention away from TNA's accomplishments. And that's the point. When you can praise TNA without putting down AEW, right? You can praise AEW without putting down WWE. You can praise WWE without putting down anybody else. You don't always have to compare and be a tribalist. I tweeted last night about Bound for Glory. I talked about the good stuff. I talked about the bad stuff. I didn't talk about any other company last night because no other company was involved. Yeah, we had Wendy Chu on the show, but that was it. That was the only WWE star on the entire show, and she made no fucking difference whatsoever. She was in the second match on the show, and it wasn't even a good match, and they kicked her ass afterwards, and they probably sent her packing. So I just don't see the reason why you would need to even talk about that. She has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it at all. So why even bring it up? Makes no sense to me. But again, I am a reasonable human being and I'm a fully functioning adult and I don't have to go there. It is bonkers to me. It is just bonkers to me. But those are the two things that I really want to get off my chest. I feel like something big is going to happen with this company in 2025. It sounds like they're really going to try to go for it. And I'll be honest, I never thought they were going to do that. I always felt like they were content being content, if you know what that means. Like I always felt that they bought TNA just to be cheap content for their networks because this was even before when they bought TNA because they wanted to salvage it for Fight Network because it was the number one show on Fight Network, right? If you guys remember, like they were in such dire straits in 2017. And Dixie was running the company into the ground. She was being sued by Billy Corgan, and they were trying to push it over to Aerolex. And there was like a court case, and then Fight Network, Anthem came in and bought it during that time because they wanted to salvage it for the Fight Network because they were about to lose UFC. UFC was on Fight Network. They had some of the shows on there, and then next to UFC was TNA, and TNA was doing such great numbers compared to everything else that they were doing. They wanted to salvage it. They saw this distressed asset that they could probably get for a decent price, rebuild it, and then pump up the Fight Network in Canada. And in the meantime, they'd always looked at expanding into the U.S. market. And in 2019, they did that. The summer of 2019, they bought Access. And people say, oh, they only bought Access to put TNA on it. No, I think having TNA gave them a better excuse to buy Access, but they were always looking to expand into the market. And so they wanted to not just be a Canadian company. They wanted to be kind of like a bigger company with offices in the U.S. and in Canada and expand their brand and expand their reach, and they were able to do that. And so, they bought Access TV, and they immediately put Impact on there. Impact became the biggest show in the history of that network. And the Kenny Omega episode, as Scott D'Amore recently revealed, was the biggest show in the history, the biggest episode in the history of the network of all time. With not only the live airing, but the replays and the on-demand viewings and all that stuff. That became a big deal to the network. So I was always under the impressions like it would take a lot of money for them to move off of Access TV because it's so important to that network. But what we recently learned is that they're willing to play ball with other networks. Because Invicta, if Impact was number one, Invicta had to be number two. It just had to be. And Invicta was live. It was like a live sporting event. So Invicta had to be number two. We never got the ratings because they never really made a dent in the top 150. But it had to be number two. And they sold it to CBS Sportsnet. They not the company, but the TV rights. So I think that once that happened, I think that it immediately put TNA on the table for another network. I think that became a real possibility. And now if you look at them going live in 25 in a big venue, and I hope they have a big set and a beautiful set. They upgrade the production. I think if they really want to make a run for it, and last night's Bound for Glory was the best looking pay-per-view I think they've done since they bought the company. The production was outstanding except for one camera, which didn't have the same filter as the rest of the cameras. And then they had a couple of audio glitches here and there. But for the most part, it was the best looking thing that they've done since they bought the company. I loved it. It was like it was a big crowd. They had the big screens. The color was great. The camera work was great. Audio was on point most of the night except for a couple of scenes. I thought it looked tremendous. So if they're, and now they're going back to the Boeing Tech Center for their first live episode of Impact. And I thought that when they were there earlier in September, that was the best that they had ever looked. That was the first time since Anthem bought the company. I was like, this looks like a big budget, like a big time major league promotion. It really did. Now, Rebellion and Hard to Kill also looked fantastic. But I thought Boeing Tech Center was like, this looks better than a lot of episodes of Dynamite and Collision. It really did. And there's only, the pay-per-view probably had 1,300 people the next night, and it still looked tremendous. It still looked great. So, I think they really got to go big. They need to hit a home run with their live episode, and if they do, and they're able to shop that around, I think I would take Bound for Glory, and take, if they do a big crowd for Genesis, and they do a big crowd for that Impact in January, they take those three, and then in Victory Road from last year, and they shop those around. I think they could probably get themselves on a bigger network. I really think they could, because bigger networks right now are dying, and they're hungry for sustainable content. They need something to draw numbers every week, and pro wrestling does numbers. Like Dynamite's numbers and Collision numbers are not great anymore, but Dynamite's typically in the top 5, and Collision is like typically in the top 20. You know what I mean? I think they could still do big numbers. Like I think if Impact gets on a station that's on an upper tier station that's not like where you have to spend a bunch of extra money to get them a part of your cable package, like one of the main channels, I think you're looking at them being regularly in the top 50, nowhere, definitely in the top 100, but I think you can see them regularly in the top 50. And if you can have a top 50 show in prime time, 52 weeks a year, and you can get it for not having to spend a lot of money because TNA is not going to charge a ton of money, I think that's a win for a network. And so I hope that they shop it around. Let's see. Morales says, I liked the set for BFG last night. I thought it was the best looking set they've ever had since Anthem bought the company. It was legit the best looking show they've ever done. Brian says they have a big story eventually with Santana winning the world title. I think they do. I just don't trust that they'll be able to do it. I think what they need to do is get those titles off of PCO and split them up, the digital media and the international. And while I had an idea to make Gresham the international title, the champion, I had that idea last week, and I pitched it. But now he's leaving, so it's what it is. But I thought put the international title on him, and then he can defend it against international competitors. Like you bring in somebody from Japan, Mexico, just from around the world, like the UK, and becomes like that gimmick. And it's like, hey, this is the good match belt, right? We don't really need, and you can still do feuds around it, some storylines, but they don't really have to be overly dramatic. So that was the idea. But I think, you break those two titles off of PCO, and the International Heavyweight Championship can become your number 2 title for the heavyweight division, right? And you could even headline some TNA Plus specials with it, right? That way we don't have to have the World Heavyweight Champion defending on every show. You could put him in a tag match, or you can even not have him on the show. And then now you got a secondary championship that actually can headline some of your bigger shows. And I think Mike Santana could be that guy while you wait to crown him as your World Heavyweight Champion one day. I think that would be something that they can do. Let's see. Morales says, I truly believe if Scott was there, if Scott was still there, BFG would have a crowd in the dark. That was a thing. I don't know if you guys know who Jeff Kavanaugh is, but he's a guy. He's kind of like one of Scott D'Amore's guys. And I think he was involved in the production side of TNA a little bit and live event production. And he does not like the crowd to be lit. And he said whenever Hard to Kill happened last year and the crowd was well lit, and you can actually see the audience. He was like actually insulting fans. Yeah, it might have been Rebellion, or I can't remember which one, but the crowd was really well lit. He went on Twitter and was like, "There you go, you got your wish, babies. You can see the crowd, but I like it when the ring is well lit better." And so I think that was just their idea of what a good show looked like, was you kept the focus in the ring and you couldn't see the crowd. I think you can have both. I think you can have the ring well lit and the crowd well lit, because you can see the crowd enjoying themselves and it looks like it's a bigger fight feel. When you're watching these boxing matches, right? Like, just not even you, because UFC, you can see the crowd in UFC, but it makes it hard because they have the cage, right? The focus is in the cage. But take a look at any boxing match. They have the hard cam up against the audience, and you can see them there and them going crazy and them enjoying themselves. And then they have celebrities out there, and they focus on them. The audience is a part of the show, and much more so in pro wrestling when you have that. So I think lighting the crowd makes it look like it's a better production. But when you don't have a good crowd, you want to keep it dark. That way nobody notices how little people are there. Or if you're having a crowd that's not really paying attention, you want to just put it dark because you don't really have a good crowd. So IO says they can make a great presentation chart to networks. Yeah, I think they can. I think they're, like, since June, they've been on a run of such good shows. There's been a couple of bad ones. There's been a couple of bad tapings, Kentucky, Nashville. But outside of those, I think they have a lot of good reels since June, since Chicago. And then, of course, you add in the two Vegas, the two Vegas pay-per-views, and then the Vegas episodes of Impact. I think you have, like, a lot of good production that you can put on a reel to a network and really sell yourself. And you don't have to charge a lot of money. You don't. And then you make the TV show an infomercial to get people to go buy the app and come to the arenas. It's more of an old school style of promotion, where you're not living dying by the TV. The TV is a springboard to get people to come to your live events and to buy your app, I think, and to buy your pay-per-views. I think that's what they can do. Let's see. Critical Sting. I find it wild that this is the same company running a few hundred in Louisville. Yeah, the Louisville show was disgusting. And I hope they never go back to that venue. I'm not saying they can't go back to Louisville, because I think Louisville is a wrestling town. Tuesday night at the Gardens, back in the day, Memphis would run Louisville, and they would sell 5,000 tickets like every Tuesday. So Louisville has a deep, rich wrestling history, and they have better venues than the bar that they booked. And I just hope that they never go back there ever again. It looks like crap. It sounds like crap. It's a dead crowd. I think they need to go to a bigger venue if they ever go back to Louisville. Morales, I hope TNA sells out the venue for Genesis. Brother, that's going to be tough. That's a huge place. I am very curious how it does. Ring of Honor and AEW both had trouble there. And I'm talking about AEW ROH. I'm not talking about, like, old school Ring of Honor. They had a lot of trouble selling tickets in that venue. Let's say you go back to Final Battle from last year. They had a decent crowd, but it was tough. I think they did sell it out WrestleMania weekend, but that was a WrestleMania crowd, right? You're getting the offshoot of WWE. But other than that, they've really struggled to sell that venue out. And Dallas is kind of an oversaturated market too. I mean, TNA just ran Arlington, or I'm sorry, AEW ran Arlington, for what, 2 months in a row every week for Collision there in that esports arena. So, I says New Japan flops in the venue. They do. They do that. It's a big arena, but I think they're not really charging a lot of money. So that's why it keeps getting booked. So if they keep the ticket prices low, they have a hot act in the main event, and they get on the ground and hustle, they could get a lot of people in there. But I don't know. I'm kind of curious of how this one goes. But hey guys, I'm getting closer to this vehicle inspection, so I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for hanging out with me in the chat. This was just a YouTube deal, just something I wanted to do while I was sitting in my car waiting to get my vehicle inspection completed. The sun's finally coming out, and I'm only 2 cars away from getting my inspection done. And then after that, next week I got to head to the DMV. So the life of a guy living in Hawaii, just trying to get his car registered, get his registration updated every year. But that is going to do it for me on this edition of Brace for Impact, a special Brace for Impact just for the YouTube. Well, I will put the audio on Patreon, because I always put the audio on Patreon. But this was an impromptu Q&A, just shooting the shit, bullshit, all kinds of stuff. If I get stuck here any longer, I might just do another one. But we'll see how it goes. Thanks to everybody that joined me live. Make sure you head to patreon.com/the Mike and JD Show. We got a lot of stuff cooking. I think we're going to do a Halloween thing this coming up week. Right, we're going to record on Wednesday this week, and so we got a lot of stuff coming down the pike. I'm going to try to have another article out here pretty soon. I do articles exclusive for the Patreon, so it's not just audio and video stuff. We're actually getting written material there too. Io can tell you that it is worth your $5 if you're a fan of the show. I would greatly appreciate you guys supporting the show. That's how I'm able to keep doing this stuff. So now all the software, all this stuff costs a lot of money, and so Patreon is what I'm able to use to actually buy this stuff. So I greatly appreciate everybody's support. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, mahalo.
TNA Wrestling, we're shadows to that story. Felt the cold embrace that I never before. The ground beneath me shakes, the sky